Bleav in Everything Auburn is brought to you by Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your #1 source for online betting. From the easiest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC, and even MMA. Head to Bet Online today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online. The game starts here. War Eagle, everybody. Welcome back to Bleav in Everything Auburn. I'm Taylor Davis. He is the legend himself, Jason Campbell, and we welcome you in to another episode of Bleav in Everything Auburn, here to talk about Auburn athletics and everything that's been going on around the plains, in the sky. We'll talk about it all because it's been a weird couple of weeks for Auburn, but we've got another home game to talk about this weekend as ULM comes to town, Louisiana Monroe. Hopefully the Tigers can add to the win column, which has been sparse this season. But coming off a bye week, there's certainly been a lot of news, a lot of talk, and just 3 games left for the Tigers in this football season, pending an actual miracle of winning 3 straight and ending up in a bowl game, in which case they would have 4 more. But nonetheless, we welcome you in. J-Cam, you alluded to it before we started recording. December is going to be pretty hectic. Coach Freeze has talked about it as well. He said that the recruiting talks with your current players are already happening. Guys talking about what the offseason is going to look like for them, what their plans are, being involved in the NIL collective the way you are. What does end of regular season and specifically the month of December entail for a program like Auburn that still has a lot of steps to build on?
Yeah, it is a trying time to say the least, because everything's congested into one, right? You got your guys you got to recruit as if they was coming out of high school, and then you got the high school recruits, and then you got transfer portal windows going to open in December. So then it's the floodgates of, okay, how many transfer guys do you get? How do you vet the transfer guys? Who's all in and who's just trying to chase a dollar?
Right.
You deal with all of that. And then on top of that, you got to deal with agents, parents, all different kind of, just it's a lot when it gets towards the end of November, early December, and middle of December, and towards the end of December. So, we'll see what happens. But right now, it's definitely a recruiting process of your own players. That's number one. Make sure you keep this roster intact. And there are going to be some guys that are going to be let go, right? So at the end of the year, there are some guys who are going to say, hey, it's best off for you to go somewhere else.
Right.
It's not working out here. That's just a business decision, because you got to have the funds to put people in those seats,
right,
that can actually do what you're looking for. And that's just become the nature of it. That's when money gets involved and things start trickling towards the business. And then there's the evolution of revenue sharing. Revenue sharing is supposed to start July 1st. So a lot of questions, right? So question number one is, does players become employees? So if a player becomes an employee of a university, then they're not obligated to have to go to class. So you can either just play ball and just focus on that. So if you're a basketball player that's one and done, you may opt not to go to class because you think you're just going to practice and work and go to the pros. If you're a baseball player, you may say, hey, I want to go for 1 year and just, play sports, play baseball, and then all of a sudden I'm going to go to the pro. Now, if you're a football player, you can't go to the next level until you're in college for 3 years. So my whole thing is 90% of guys don't make it to the next level. So you should try to get your degree while you're there, because it's going to pay off for you in the long run.
Right.
So how many of those kids will actually choose to get their degree? And how many of those kids will just say, forget it, I'm just going to play ball and I'm an employee? So there's questions.
What the heck?
And then what if revenue sharing doesn't kick off July 1st?
Yeah.
The NILs are banking on revenue sharing taking over, and they're over promising kids contracts and all of those type of things. And then they're stuck not being able to fund those contracts. Now you got a problem there. Thankfully for Auburn, we have a really good NIL board. They're still fundraising. They're still bringing in money. So at the end of the day, if revenue sharing doesn't take off when it's supposed to, we can still fund our kids' salary throughout the year. So that's the best thing, that's going for Auburn. But there are so many things that's going to transpire, Taylor, as soon as the season's over with.
Yeah.
Like, things are going to start to move quickly. And how much money does football get from revenue share? How much money does baseball get from revenue share?
Right.
Auburn has become a real basketball school as well now, right?
Mhm.
So how much would Bruce Pearl's staff say they demand for revenue share? You know,
True.
so all these things. You look at Mississippi State, huge baseball program.
Yeah.
They're going to demand a lot more revenue sharing as well. So football may
So
not get 15
true.
million. They may not get 13 million. It all depends on what your school is predicated. South Carolina women's team,
Yep.
right?
No,
They
it's so
generate a
true.
lot of revenue money. So if
Mhm.
you're gonna give them 3-4 million in revenue, no, they're gonna be like, get the heck out of here. We've been here in this university for the last decade.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of pressure on ads and presidents
Yeah.
and the coaching staffs and general managers. You got to put general managers in place now to run the rosters like NFL, Major League
Yep.
Baseball, and WNBA and all these type of things. So it's trending directly towards definitely away from school.
It's I mean, so much of that I'm optimistic that some of the revenue sharing would help eliminate some of the chaos, but then with everything, there are still so many elements of it that aren't going to be black and white, and it's going to cause new problems. We're also starting to see, and this started back in week 3 when the UNLV quarterback did it, but more announcements happening as of late, guys leaving their team and already jumping into the portal. We are in season. Like, that to me is absurd. And there are so many parts of this that I just think head coaches are even the best of them are going to have a hard time keeping a grasp on. Not necessarily names, and obviously there's a lot more that will transpire over the next couple of months. But do you anticipate that there will be departures for this Auburn team that surprise people?
You always anticipate 1 or 2 guys, right?
Okay.
Just because maybe the fit's not there, or maybe you can out recruit that person. And
Sure.
they're demanding a lot more money. That you like, no, we're not going to put that much money into you like that.
Right.
So you have those things that are coming. Now, what's going to transpire, over the next year is redshirt rule supposed to be going away. So now kids supposed to get 5 years to play college sports. So if you do that, once you implement revenue sharing, do you put in there where kids can't transfer for at least 2 years? I think that would help coaches and stuff not have the pressure of playing a kid out of high school to keep them transferring, because you want to keep them happy. So from that standpoint, but I do anticipate maybe 1 or 2 guys.
Okay.
But for the most part, over the last 3 years, Auburn has done a really good job of keeping their guys.
Yeah.
Like I said, we take care of our guys really well. The other aspect of that is, dude, we're 3-6, and you're probably one of the highest paid rosters in top 5 in college football. You know what I'm saying? So
that's crazy.
The fact that people still donate, the fact that people still support you, the stadium is still sold out. You show me who you are when you go through hard times and adversity, right? So that's who you show me who you are. Because no player can say, oh man, this fan base have stopped. No, they have continued to pour support, continue to pour love, and continue to support the turnaround, and hoping things just start to happen faster here sooner than later. And to them, I said, man, you got to show commitment back.
Yeah.
Like by showing that you're all in. People are all in giving money, or are you all in sticking with the team through the tough time? Dude, stop blaming somebody else that we're 3-6. You are part of the team. So you are 3-6.
Yeah.
So get that out your head and stop looking for somewhere to run to and look for situations and solutions to solve while we're 3-6.
Exactly. That's so true. And the support, I mean, that's why I'm biased, but like Auburn's just different. Auburn is just different. You're not going to see Auburn fans throwing trash on the field. I hope. Dear Lord, no one do that. Like, that trend is one that needs to die in college football. Like, what in the world is that accomplishing? I digress. Okay, let's talk about this week, because Louisiana Monroe coming to town, obviously one that you got to have. You should have, you gotta have. I mean, like, you can't allow this narrative to get any worse, and a UL Monroe loss would likely do that. Their offense has struggled. They've got 300.8 yards per game. They're 130th in the nation in passing yards per game with just 128.7. Now, their ground game has certainly been more efficient, so Auburn's going to have to key in on stopping that. They're running about 172.1 yards per game. They're led by true freshman Ahmad Hardy. that's definitely going to have the attention of our defense. He's got 915 yards on the season. They've played 2 quarterbacks this year, one of which being Oklahoma transfer General Booty, and more as of late has been Aiden Armenta? I don't know. We'll find out.
Don't ask me.
You got to find out before the broadcast, but sure. Redshirt freshman with 898 passing yards, 7 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. So again, the offense has really been hot and cold other than the ground game. Defensively, also kind of mid-tier, but they are led by defensive back Williams Jr., who's been kind of a takeaway machine. He's one that our wideouts are going to have to pay attention to. They just have 17 sacks on the year, which needs to be impactful because Auburn's not entirely sure who's playing at quarterback. And that's what I want to get into because apparently Peyton Thorne suffered a shoulder injury during the Vanderbilt game to his non-throwing arm, continued to play through it. It kept him out of practice the week of the bye week. And there's been conflicting reports this week, as has been the tale of the team, that Peyton says one thing and Coach Freeze says yet another. Peyton Thorne telling reporters he feels good, he's ready to go, and Hugh Freeze saying he's in fact not ready to go. And could it be Hank Brown? Could we get a glimpse at Walker White, who's also been talked up a good bit in the media this week? I have no freaking clue, but let's turn to Jake Ham, who unfortunately has no more playing eligibility because I'd much rather see you out there, buddy.
Hey, I'll hop out there right now with one knee and a brace on that thing. And,
what is going on, dude?
Give me some of this NIL money. Give me some of that back pay.
Yeah.
Like, give some back pay. Let's go back to 04.
You earned it, yeah.
I would say this. The communication with Coach Freeze and Thorne's kind of been off all year, right? Let's
you
just
could say that again.
This, where Coach says something publicly, Thorne comes back, says something different. On the sideline, they're constantly, sometimes, you're trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's not a position as a player that you should be picking targets with your coach.
Right.
Because if you ever want to play at the next level or you want someone to give you a recommendation, who's going to give you a recommendation? It's usually your boss.
Yeah.
Right. So, one, and like I said, I'm not speaking for Peyton, but one, you got to make sure you're coachable, right? You got to make sure that you're not feeling like I'm always right, and I'm getting in defense mode. Like, to be a great player, you got to be able to soak up knowledge like a sponge.
Yeah.
And then you got to be able to take constructive criticism. A lot of these kids don't know how to take constructive criticism. So they're always in the defense mode, like, oh, I'm trying to defend myself for why this is not happening. I'm trying to defend myself for why that's not happening. No, dude, you have the ball in your hand. If you threw the interception, just own it. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if the receiver ran the wrong route, you don't publicly try to defend it. You just say, hey, you just got to make better choices. Just kind of miscommunication. You go to the locker room and say, dude, I need you to be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. Like, I'm trusting you to be there. So I just feel like at this point in time, you got 3 games left. You want to kind of know what you got in Hank, right? Because the simple fact, the last time the kid played, he played good against New Mexico, and then he came back and played Arkansas. His first game against a Power 4 team. And what happened? Okay, he threw 3 interceptions. Peyton's thrown 3 interceptions before. He's thrown 4. So you had an opportunity to kind of see how he would respond.
Right.
But if you're trying to see what you got going to the offseason, it's not like, hey, Peyton had just showed this outstanding season that, all right, coach, you got to ride with him for the rest of the year because you may affect this draft stock and all that type of stuff.
Right.
That's not the case here. So the thing is, we've only won 1 Power 4 game. So if you want to see what a kid got, whether that's Peyton starts the game off and all of a sudden we get out a good lead. Now you want to go ahead and let's play Hank, let's play Walker or whatever you got. Or you just say, hey, Hank, I want to see how you respond. Peyton's kind of dealing with an injury right now. Let's see if he recovers over the next week. But for this game, I want to see Hank and Walker. Like say Hank and Walker. So I want you 2 guys who are going to play this game because I want to see what we have into the future.
Totally.
And I want to see, Hank, how you respond since your last time out. So the only way to know that is you got to put a kid on the field. And I just feel like this game, if you're going to do it, just do it this game and see what happens before you get to those final 2.
100%. Shoulder injury or not, I don't really care. I don't want to see Peyton Thorne in this game. And that's not because of bad play. That's because we don't need to see Peyton Thorne in this game. All respect to Louisiana Monroe. Anybody can come in any given week and pull off a victory. I get that. But looking at their roster, looking at some of their games this season, they're 5-4. This is not a New Mexico State coming into Jordan-Hare last season. This game should easily be Auburn's. I don't think there's a need to put Peyton Thorne out there. This is a prime opportunity for you to give another start to a guy that handled himself very well against a similar caliber opponent in New Mexico. Heck, that quarterback was hard to handle for our defense. So, I think this is a comfortable enough game. You feel like you know what the result is capable of being, especially with the way our defense has played. Our defense has held some of the top teams in the nation to, really close games because they've played lights out. This team has really struggled to get any sort of offensive continuity. So even in confidence in the defensive side alone, gives you reason to let these young guys have this game. I just don't think, and blaming it on the shoulder injury, I don't need a reason. I think that the reason is just this is a better opportunity for these young guys to get caliber reps. Let Hank Brown get the start, considering he's been in that role before. Walker White has not seen the field, so he ain't going to start. I do think it's weird that in the media, everyone's talking about, is it Peyton or is it Walker? Hold on. Where's Hank? We've got a guy that did start 2 games in season that would likely take that role. Will Walker get in once it's comfortable? Yes. But I think Hank can get this to a comfortable lead. I don't understand putting Peyton out there. Shoulder can be the healthiest it's ever been. To me, this game doesn't make sense for Peyton to be out there.
Well, this game doesn't improve Peyton's stock. If he goes out there for 5 touchdowns, okay, it's Louisiana Monroe. So you get better opportunity to learn more about your younger guys in games like this. Like I say, UL, what they're 5-4, so they're still trying to fight for bowl eligibility.
Yeah,
but they understand they got 2 more games after us. That's not easy games for them, so they're not going to try to get their guys hurt too much.
Correct.
But at the end of the day, they're still trying to find out how to get one more victory. Even if they finish 6-6, they may not get to a bowl game. They're in a group of 5.
Right.
So they want to find a way to get to 7 wins. So technically, they need to win 2 out of the next 3. So this game here, yes, it's a big game, or whatever they may feel. But if they get in the game and they see that, the wave is just overtaking them and they can't slow us down, then they're going to be like, all right, you're out the game.
Right.
You're out the game. You're out the game, because they need to try to figure out how to win the next 2.
Correct.
But that running back that they have, he may be auditioning for places, and he's from Mississippi. You know what I'm saying? That's how we do it. So
Auburn might be looking at him like, wait a minute.
Hey, we are losing a Mississippi guy after this year. So
hey, there's something to those Mississippi guys.
Opportunity, to be on this roster. But
no, he's no slouch.
Right. So I'm just saying, all this, you loyal to a fault, right? But at some point, you got to see what you have. There's no reason why not to this week.
Yes.
So he's trying to help him a little bit by saying, hey, bro, sit this one out.
Yeah.
And then see if you can start the next 2 against A&M and Bama.
Which, for all intents and purposes, it's going to be the same thing. If Hank and or Walker go ball this week against UL Monroe, they're not taking the field for Texas A&M in a night game. No chance anyone other than Peyton Thorne starts. They learned that lesson midseason when we got high and mighty about Hank Brown against New Mexico, gave him the reins to get Arkansas, and realized, okay, this is too big of a level for where he's at right now. We know the next 2 games after that, the last 2 SEC opponents, 2 of the best in the league, those will be Peyton's.
We got to win 3 in a row to get to a bowl game.
Oh, here we go.
What's our percentages to get to a bowl game?
0.2. I don't know.
Hold on now. We get Monroe at home. We get A&M at home in a night game.
I am excited that one's a night game.
That's the last home game of the season. So the fans going to be rowdy. You play pretty good at home at nighttime. Last year, 4th and 31 should be sitting in your head. No one's going to give you a chance in the world to win that game in Alabama. That's when Auburn typically shows up in Tuscaloosa. So what I'm saying is, you win this one and you can get A&M. You take momentum to the Iron Bowl. Who's the pressure on in the Iron Bowl? Alabama, the board. They got to keep winning to either get to Atlanta or get to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So the pressure is going to be on him, and this is going to be his first Iron Bowl. He already had a year in the Iron Bowl. So Auburn's going to be like, shoot, man, we got nothing to hold back.
Right.
Let's let it rip. That's a scary position if you're an opponent in that situation. So there's chance, there's opportunity for Auburn to get a 3-game win streak.
You're right. And look, there is something really weird about the Texas A&M game because the week after is the long-awaited, hyped-up matchup with Texas that has been a rivalry that hasn't been played in years. It could potentially determine who goes to the SEC championship. Like, you want to talk about looking ahead. Like, the chances that they actually slip in Jordan-Hare are increased because of what they have coming up after. I actually think the Iron Bowl in Tuscaloosa, because Bama's back is fully against the wall. And I think you saw this week, and I would probably say the Georgia game, when Jalen Milroe gets going, no one has an answer for this kid. He hasn't been consistently that, but I thought seeing him in Baton Rouge, I don't know how this kid's a magician, but he's huge. Like it is wild to watch. So as great as our defense has been, that's a different test. We have not seen we've struggled with mobile quarterbacks in general, but one like Jalen Milroe, that's another level. And if they are on the cusp because of the way the SEC has just imploded this year of postseason, I actually think the Iron Bowl is going to be tougher than maybe Texas A&M at home, which I initially would not have said that because I was very high on Texas A&M. Anything else you want to cover about this week's game? Anything else you need to see? Run the ball.
Run the ball. Need in a fight like the basketball team or something to spark some energy or something. Hey, whatever happened, on the plane or whatever, and these guys they took it out to Houston, and they played some real basketball. That felt like a March Madness game.
It did.
And Pettiford, that guard, dude's tough. So
we've had some
basketball to me won the weekend.
Yes.
And I think people are so excited about what they're going to see this season. But maybe somebody ruffles some feathers a little bit. Get out there and
someone getting a fight in the locker room. I don't know. That was exactly what my next bullet point was before we transitioned to the playoff.
Pull his shirts off, but just
Yeah, definitely not the typical news coming out the night before a game, but it was released on social media that Auburn's plane that had departed Auburn for Houston had to turn around and return to Auburn because 2 players got into an altercation on the airplane. And also I've had questions about like logistics, how that happens. Cause like these aren't tiny humans. This isn't like me getting scrappy on an airplane. These are huge human beings on a tiny plane. How were they even throwing down? I don't understand it. But
I know I'd have been one of them players like, hey, look, stop it, because if one of you go scout into the cockpit up front and knock out our people that fly the plane, nobody on here know how to fly.
Craziest thing I've ever heard. Part of me was like, this has to be a rumor. But then the audio from the pilot was released of him calling down to air traffic control saying that clothes were being ripped and a guy was bloody and it was a whole thing. And I got to say, there's an element of it that is embarrassing. Like, that's just like Auburn is just so easy to take shots at right now. Thank God they won, because otherwise it would have been like,
oh yeah,
this athletic department is up in flames, but then part of it was kind of hilarious, but nonetheless really stupid. And I do think that Bruce Pearl and his staff are going to stay on top of discipline and stuff like that, because we're also very early in season. So like, I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, but they finally made it to Houston and pulled off a big win over the number 4 team in the nation, 74-69, without freshman forward Jack Howard and senior forward Jaheim Hudson, who were not there. So huge win for the team and gives you a lot of excitement for what this group could do. Basketball is also so weird. I forget every single year, because I'm so inundated with football and how many familiar faces there are in football, even if they're at a different team. Like, I feel like I've been covering, DJ Uyunglele for 85 years, because I kind of have. But basketball, I mean, I look at our roster and I'm like, who? Like, other than Janai, Dylan Cardwell, Chad Baker Mazar. Like, there's a few returners, but for the most part, like, the turnover in basketball is so crazy, but there's a lot to be excited about with this group if they can, get their temper under control. Maybe implement some yoga.
Well, hey, meditation is always good. But you look at the SEC as a whole. Kentucky looked good the other night, right?
They beat Duke for the first time in 9 years.
They lost most of their whole roster. Duke
Mhm.
came in, put together a quick roster. Arkansas is going to be good. Bama, we know is going to be good. It's going to be a fun year. But meditation is always good for the mind and the soul. But typically that wasn't a thing. Typically, some feathers got ruffled in practice a little bit, and that's competitive.
Right.
Sometimes that happens. Like, people act like you get on fights in practice. They're happening all the time. Like, seeing somebody getting a fight in the game the other day. Debo Samuel's pushing his guy from 49.
The holder and the kicker.
It happens. It just so happened that it was in the air.
Yeah.
That typically doesn't happen. But
I just need to know what sparked it, though. Like, you're sitting on an airplane, you're not like
something crazy. It's usually something crazy, like not something worth, but it's probably something that got under somebody's skin, and then all of a sudden it just got too far.
Insane. Like, I seriously was like, this is not happening. Like, Auburn cannot catch a break again. Thank goodness they won.
Right.
And Dylan Carwell giving a hilarious line, "You put a bunch of dogs on a plane, what do you expect to happen?" I can't. That about sums it up. Real quickly, let me get your reaction to the second release of the college football playoff rankings, because some surprises, but I mean, look, at the end of the day, these really don't matter a whole lot. I really think that we released them a little bit too early, but that's just, it gives us all something to talk about and something to argue about. But like, it does start to give you an indicator of what the committee is prioritizing. And I think it really is very watered down right now to basically be wins and losses. I don't know that they're really putting as much emphasis on strength of schedule as they claim they do, because I'm not entirely sure how Georgia fell as many spots as they did for losing to a ranked team, but Miami fell only like 5 or 6 after losing to an unranked team. So, like, I don't know that we're putting the same emphasis on opponent strength of schedule, weighting the losses and weighting the wins as much as we are just looking at, like, Penn State at 4 over IU. CFP rankings: Oregon 1, Ohio State 2, Texas 3, Penn State 4, IU 5. IU is not only undefeated, they've played 10 games. Penn State's played 9. They're 8-1. I don't really get that, but whatever. BYU 6, Tennessee 7, Notre Dame 8, Miami 9 after losing to Georgia Tech, Alabama 10, Ole Miss 11, Georgia 12. But as we know, the highest ranked group of 5 would bump up to 12. Boise State is sitting at 13 right now. They would bump Georgia out the way it sits right now.
Well, right now they can't make it look SEC bias. Let's just be honest. Because if you look at Notre Dame, you lose to Northern Illinois at home. You should not even be in the top 10. You look at Miami. You barely beat Virginia Tech on a Hail Mary questionable call. And then you barely beat Duke. You had to come back to win that one at the end.
Louisville,
same scenario. You had to fight like crazy to get that one. And then it caught up with you this weekend against Georgia Tech. So
Georgia Tech, who's unranked?
Who's unranked, and you're still in front of Alabama, Ole Miss, and Georgia. Georgia probably has the toughest schedule. They had to go on the road to Bama, the road to Texas, on the road to Ole Miss. And, right now they're 1-2 on the road in those games. But they didn't get depleted. Ole Miss beat them pretty good. But the rest of the time, they was fighting hard. Now, the crazy thing is they're still in it because they still get to play Tennessee. And Tennessee is in there, and they're ranked up
Tennessee
there.
7.
Yeah, so they play each other this weekend. So
even though their loss is to Arkansas.
Yeah. And their losses to Arkansas. So how is Tennessee in front of Georgia? And Arkansas is not even ranked. So that's why Penn State. How is Penn State so high up there?
I think Penn State's a fraud. I don't.
Yeah. Like Indiana, I get it. Indiana's hot right now, but they should be ahead.
I would have them in the top 4.
Yeah, I'll put them ahead of Penn State.
Right.
So right now, if the playoffs started today, Notre Dame would be at Tennessee in the on-campus matchup, first round on campus. Boise State would be at Ohio State. how is Boise in front of SMU? I guess SMU got a chance. They're leading the ACC, so they can win it and get in that way.
Yeah.
You look at Ole Miss. Ole Miss would be at Penn State. Why does Ole Miss have to go to Penn State? They play a tougher schedule. But, and then Alabama would be at Indiana. So if the first round playoff started today, and then the winner of the Alabama and Indiana game would go to Texas and play Texas. The winner of the Notre Dame and Tennessee game would go to Oregon. Boise State and Ohio State would go to Miami. Ole Miss and Penn State would go to BYU, who actually got away with one against Utah this weekend.
Oh my gosh, that was insane.
So they should have lost that game. Yep. So they got a gift in beating Utah. So a couple of these teams in here shouldn't be in here, but like I said, we got 3 weeks to go. So yeah, it's gonna iron itself out.
I'm not entirely sure that I would have different teams there, but the order of them is a bit confusing. And I think the only thing that we take away from having weekly rankings this early is an indicator of what the committee is really prioritizing this year. And it just seems that like the win-loss column is all they're prioritizing right now. And I don't think that's the whole tale of the season. So, and I get the whole, you can't be SEC biased. And when I went to the mock draft thingy, the mock CFP selection, it's very hard, and I learned it then, to not make your ranking based on who you think would win in a future matchup. Like everyone wants to talk about, like, I would take a 2-loss SEC team over a 1-loss Penn State. Well, I agree with that, but you can't take hypothetical future expectations as part of your reasoning for where you're placing these teams. You simply have to go off of what they've actually done. And I know a lot of people think that the committee definitely thinks about what matchups would be good. They supposedly don't. It's like in their bylaws that like that's not part of it. And they reiterated with us, you can't think about like, well, Georgia's going to run the table through all of this, so they must be the 5th best team in the nation. Well, if they're coming in with 3 losses, they're not. So that's a hard piece of it to separate, because I do feel like your record and your schedule and your season say one thing, but when it comes time to play against other conferences, mostly the SEC, I'm taking the SEC 9 times out of 10.
Well, Notre Dame has faced the SEC many times over the last couple of years and gotten routed.
Yeah.
So gotten routed. So, to me, that just says something. But then to me, why can't you say it's Big Ten bias? You got Oregon at 1, Ohio State at 2, Penn State at 4, Indiana at 5. So
yeah, very. And I just
Big Ten bias.
They're not near as deep as the SEC this year. Like there's a reason everyone always wants to say that SEC bias is like disproven when you look at, like there's the top tier, Bama, Georgia, but then it drops so far. I think this year in particular, you are seeing that there is way more distribution of talent in the SEC. The fact that South Carolina is coming up with big wins, the fact that Arkansas has come up with big wins, Texas A&M, LSU's come up with big wins, Ole Miss has come up with big wins, Georgia, Bama, Texas, like really the only ones that Vanderbilt, hello, like the only ones that aren't really being talked about are Auburn and Oklahoma.
Oh, do it. Auburn, Oklahoma,
and Florida
State right now.
And Florida and Mississippi
Florida has actually been making noise this year, though. Like, they went to Tennessee, should have won that game. You fumbled the ball on the 1-yard line going in, then you missed the field goal going in for the half.
Right.
You end up going to overtime, which you could have won that game in Knoxville.
Right.
And then you had Georgia on the ropes. And your quarterback
got hurt. Yeah. Right.
So
but then you look at the Texas score, and you were
at that point they were just like
actually embarrassed.
I'm over it. So I think at one point they was fighting for their coach. Their coach got announced he was coming back. It's almost like they just took a seat.
Yeah, I know. But to that point, though, I do think that the SEC is a lot more evenly matched right now, and so I do think we force the narrative every season that in the SEC it's a gauntlet, and week in and week out you're like beating yourself up because of who you're playing. And some years that's not necessarily true. Some years going to play Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and South Carolina aren't that tough. This year, literally anyone can pull off a win, and that's been proven when the big dogs like Bama and Georgia are dropping the way they have. So I still think they're more equipped and prepared for postseason play because of all of that, more so this year than any in the past. But
the best schedule to have is Notre Dame.
Pardon?
The best schedule to have is Notre Dame.
Until you get to postseason and you don't know what the frick to do with talent like that.
But you're not in a conference. So you get an easy path almost every year to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And it's not fair. Like, they should make them actual schedule. I know they have USC and all that. USC not playing up to the par, but come on, man. Like,
they have Army next week. I think if Army could pull that one off, they could.
Army's 9-0, and they're ranked 24.
Mm-hmm.
And where's that game at?
I'm not entirely sure.
Well, they do have an equal opportunity to win the game, but
Army could win.
Army just barely beat who I'm thinking of 14-3 last week.
They didn't have their quarterback, and he stirs the drink.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, Bryson Daly is a stud. So
maybe I pick Army.
That would be the only way that Notre Dame, I think, ends up falling out. Otherwise, they're going to win out. They're going to be icing and relaxing on conference championship Saturday, waiting for where they're headed the next week. Like, I digress. I know. And why would they change it? The way it sits right now, it serves them well. Lots of exciting things ahead as regular season wraps up. We are in week 12, so just a few more regular season games, and then sure to be a postseason full of some chaos, which we love. So with that, we will say good night because it's so dark here, and goodbye for this episode of Bleav in Everything Auburn. I greatly appreciate my co-host and you guys, our listeners, for always following along and enjoying this ride with us, because sometimes it's quite challenging. But nonetheless, make sure you come back next week. We'll recap all the action and preview a matchup with the Aggies and get you ready for some postseason play as well. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do that so you get a notification whenever we release an episode. And if you prefer to watch on video, you can find us on Bleav's YouTube channel. We turn out videos every single week. That's going to do it for us. Thanks for listening. War Eagle.
War Eagle.